Hey, it's Robonzo. My guest for this episode is Aki Kumar. We talk band dynamics, staying creative, juggling the various aspects of musician life, and the value gratitude has had on his music and life. Let's do this. This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. I'm your host, Robonzo. This podcast features conversations with me and indie music artists. Conversations intended to help other indie musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. So welcome to another episode. Before I get into my chat with Aki Kumar, I have two podcast items to mention. One, this podcast was recognized as one of the top 15 indie music podcasts ever. Well, right now. They were mentioned or recognized in that manner by feedspot.com. I never heard of Feedspot, but it looks like some cool people trying to spin up a useful service. It's one of these content reader apps for aggregating or reading all of your favorite stuff from the web in one place. I'm a fan of that concept and content aggregators, so good luck, guys, and thanks for the recognition. The other thing is that I switched from Apple's podcast app to Overcast. That doesn't affect you as a listener. I'm just telling you I used Apple's podcast app for listening, and I recently switched to Overcast. Apple's app has been exhibiting weird behavior, not the first time. So I remember trying Overcast once before and put it on my phone again to check it out. I like it. It's acting like a good app should, so check out Overcast. They're not a sponsor or anything. I'm just excited to mention it to you. And this, by the way, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, this doesn't affect you listening to it in any way. I'm still on Apple Podcasts. I gotta be there, right? Yeah, so Aki Kumar. Aki's the godfather of Bollywood blues. He's a Hindi blues man, a San Jose blues staple. San Jose, California, that is. Arguably an icon of San Jose, the San Jose blues scene. Aki shares some enlightened thoughts on his band and the dynamics therein. He mentions humility and gratitude more than once in our conversation. Did you know that this podcast and all things Unstarving Musician are made possible by the support of listeners, people just like you? If you'd like to become a supporter of this podcast and the Unstarving Musician project, if you'd like to learn how it works, what it means to support the podcast, please go to unstarvingmusician.com/crowd support. Offering your support doesn't mean you have to spend money. There are financial options for supporting, but also options that cost you $0. Regardless of which option you choose, or even if you'd rather not offer support beyond your listening time, it's okay. You are important to me just for listening to this episode. Again, if you want to learn how to become a supporter, go to unstarvingmusician.com/crowd support. There's much excitement in Aki's life and career at the moment, from performances to recording projects, both recent and on the horizon. He is an exciting dude, pioneering a genre, I tell you. And he seems to be having a great time doing it. Here's me and Aki Kumar. I realized we first spoke back in October of 2017, and I think it was Halloween, so it's been too long.
Yeah, it's been over a year, huh?
Yeah, thank you for making time to come back and chat with me. I got to tell you something that's... I was going to say it's going to blow you away. Let's just say it's going to be a little bit of a surprise, maybe a pleasant surprise. But so I am in Panama City earlier this week. I went to stay with friends to go watch a jazz jam at this great little pub called El Amanso Guapo pub. And it's a great little tap room and place where you can get pub food, and it was a great jam. A friend of mine actually played. I shouldn't have. I wasn't expecting to because it was jazz, and I was kind of tipsy, but I went up there and did that. And somebody actually recorded it. What's that?
That's the best kind of jamming.
Not jazz for me when I'm tipsy, but anyway, it was kind of fun. I didn't actually do jazz. So anyway, another friend was there who came from where I lived to stay at the same mutual friend's home. He's a harmonica player. We've played some music together. And I don't know what prompted it, but he says, yeah, I'm trying to learn this thing by a guy named Aki Kumar. And I'm like, what? And he mentions that he is listening to Bombay Stroll, I believe. That's one of your tunes.
yeah.
Yeah, so he's trying to learn that. And so I tell him we're about to talk and that you've been on the podcast and, we're acquainted. And anyway, that was kind of cool.
That is actually really cool to see a song named Bombay Stroll, which is like a blues instrumental. How far it has made its way to Panama City.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing. Now this guy, he has some loose ties. He not terribly loose, but he spent some years in Santa Cruz, and he knows Andy Santana. And
cool.
So he doesn't know Kid Anderson, who, by the way, was recently also came back to the podcast. I don't know if you heard that, but
no, I haven't listened yet.
So I think that you and Kid kind of came around after he had left. But anyway, that was a lot of fun and made today more exciting for me.
Awesome. It's a great story, man.
Yeah. And since the last time we spoke, I know one of the things that happened, you were in a video for a company called Solange, which I just imagine has pushed you into the spotlight. And I loved watching you in that.
Yeah, I love that video. I had a cameo in there, I think, for about half a second.
It's fantastic.
What's that?
It's fantastic. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. And I was, just helping out our friend George Brandau, and he kind of asked me to be in the video, and I didn't realize he wanted me to actually just be a model, which is a first for me. So I took it as a huge compliment. And
it was fantastic.
Yeah,
no, I actually, so I have this other podcast for small businesses, and Carrie, George's wife, Carrie Brandau, co-founder of Solange, and she was on, and I asked her about the video, and she kind of walked me through the story of, instead of using the recommended actors, she's like, you know what? No, I know musicians and hairdressers, and they'll do a great job, and you guys did. It was really fun. And she's going to be excited, as will George, I think, that we mentioned her today.
Yeah, I love them both. They're awesome people.
They are. So I want to hone in on two little things I noticed you have going on, and I think that this recording will actually get out into the wild about the time or before these couple of things happen. But you are going to be one of the featured artists at the San Jose Jazz Summerfest coming up, right?
Yes.
And then I would love for you to talk about that and something by, I hope I pronounce her name correctly, someone I just discovered today as I was kind of looking over some of what you have going on, Irene Espiritu, and something called A Color-Coded Symphony at Freight and Salvage in Berkeley, I believe it is. Can you talk about those two events?
I could. San Jose Jazz is obviously one of the biggest jazz festivals around here in the Bay Area, and they basically, take over downtown San Jose, and they have multiple stages featuring multiple, subgenres of jazz, and many, many artists. It's a huge lineup over a couple of days, and I'm really stoked to be featured there again this year. San Jose is my home base. It's where all of my music has been made. It's where I got my start, even learning the most fundamental aspects of blues, harmonica. It's where I watched most of the great blues artists that, inspired me over the years. So to be an artist in the San Jose Jazz lineup is always a wonderful honor for me. And this year I'll be playing on the blues stage. I believe it's on the 10th of August. It's a Saturday. And we'll be delivering some Bollywood blues, some classics, some original songs I've written in Hindi, and maybe some new stuff that hasn't been released yet. I haven't made up my mind.
Great. That is exciting, and I'm so glad that whole thing is still happening. I know it's not easy for traditions like these types of festivals, especially given the wonky economy of Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad it sounds like it's thriving. So how many appearances have you made there?
Over the years, I'd say about three. That's my recollection right now. In various kinds of incarnations, I've played there as part of, as a featured guest, sometimes with a band. I played there many, many years ago with a band a blues band that called Tip of the Top, that I got my start with. And I've also done a Bollywood blues appearance as part of Little Village Foundation's program at San Jose Jazz. So, over the years, I've been part of that festival in various ways.
Amazing. Now tell me about Irene's event. Did I say her name right? Irene Espiritu?
Irene Espiritu, yeah, you did say her name right. Irene has, it's kind of a surprise for me because I haven't been a part of it yet. I've known about Color Coded Symphony because she's conducted that show over the last few years, or a couple of years at least, and the way she described the format of the show is that this year they're planning to feature traditional music or rhythms from India. And so naturally she thought I was an artist that would be a good fit for that show. And so they're going to feature my music, and then they're going to have some level of improvisation and audience participation as well, where people in the moment improvise within a traditional music form. So I'm kind of excited to see where this goes. I don't usually get a chance to be part of a show like this. Most of my appearances are with my band. It's pretty well known what I'm going to do. So something which is more on the improvisation side is kind of exciting to me. And I'm really happy that Irene does this. She's a wonderful, wonderful spirit, a true musician, and she's one of the kindest and nicest people I've ever worked with.
Oh, that's nice to hear. I'm glad to hear that too, because when I listened to a little bit of her work, I'm like, oh wow, she sounds really cool. I should see if she would come on the podcast. So I'm happy to hear those nice things about her.
Yeah.
That's very cool. It reminds me, is it going to be, I was looking at some pictures and description of the whole thing, and it was making me think of a gig I got to do during my last months of living in San Jose, which was something that was produced with the assistance of someone who has a big theater background. So there was a very theatrical element to it, and the music was only part of this event. So I'm a little curious if there's some overlapping or commonalities in what she's doing.
Well, I know in Color Coded Symphony, she has there's an aspect of enjoying the music without the visual aspect, at least for some portion. From what I remember, I believe there is some portion of the program where she delivers the music, or the band performs in near darkness or something to that effect. So, but again, I haven't been to that show yet, so I'm kind of excited to see how it's conducted this year.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. I hope that we'll get to hear what the experience was like in your own words in some way, and maybe when we talk next time, we'll remember to do that. And something I want to remember to do, if you're listening to my conversation with Aki right now, Aki was featured back in episode 23. I'm all the way up to episode 108. Episode 112 came out today.
That is amazing, brother. Yeah. Congratulations.
And I'm reaching Canada. It's not the first time, but I have a Canadian artist featured on there today. So that's fun. And
beautiful.
Female artist. Yeah, it's cool. So, so Aki was featured back in episode 23. And as I recall, it was a great conversation. I was looking over some notes. So look for that on the website if you are a fan of either the podcast or Aki or this conversation. Something I don't think we talked about enough last time, unless, it could happen. I could just be forgetting, but I wanted you to tell me about your band. I see these guys, and I know you play with a lot of different people, and hopefully when I say tell me about your band, that speaks to a specific group of people. But I see some guys that you play with on a regular basis. I'm loosely acquainted with one or two of them, kind of just by name, but I would love to hear about them and how you found one another and anything else fun that you can tell me.
Sure. So I have a band. I have a group of musicians that I play with very consistently. Most of my shows are with the same set of musicians. It's formal in the sense that we have been playing together for a number of years together. It's informal in that there's no contract. I don't have anybody signed because I'm not like a big name artist making $1 gazillion where I can afford to have a band. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I do, however, have a core set of musicians that have been leaning on heavily on for most of my live performances. Firstly, on drums, I really, as much as I can, I love to have and feature the great blues drummer June Core. And for anybody that is not familiar with June, and probably many people are not, because he's fairly well known in the blues world, but perhaps not so much outside of the genre. June, in my opinion, is one of the best blues drummers out there, and of all time. And it's really one of my greatest honors in the music business to be on stage with him, because his approach to drumming, his approach to music making, his approach to having a conversation with you as part of the music making process, it's untouchable. I don't know very many musicians that are able to deliver at the level that he does. And the fact that he's so humble and down to earth, where he makes himself available to do performances with me. He's got 30 years on me as far as performance and touring experience, but he's always a team player, and that itself is another beautiful aspect to him. June Core has been part of the legendary Charlie Musselwhite band for well over a decade now, and that's his main band. So again, I'm very honored that he performs with me whenever he's available. On bass, I have a wonderful Bay Area native, Vance Ehlers on bass, and Vance has been a mainstay in the blues world here in the Bay Area, and also the swing and somewhat jazz and rockabilly world as well. He's very well known, very well respected, and he's played with many top bands over the years. And over the last 5 years, I'd say I've been hiring Vance heavily for a lot of my performances. He's well versed in various different subgenres of blues and stuff. And if you're playing Bollywood blues, you have to be versatile, and Vance is versatile and top-notch professional, and a wonderful guy to be around. The good aspect to a lot of these musicians is that they're great to be around, great to have in the van, good conversationalists. So it just makes the whole process of performing a great one, a pleasant one. On guitar, I have been, over the last couple of years, working with a young man who's just, making a name for himself in the local blues scene here in the Bay Area. His name is Rome Yamalo, and he is originally from Russia. He moved out here to the U.S. As a very as a kid, as a child, but he's very heavily invested in music. He's an exceptional guitar player in multiple genres, not just blues, and he plays with a lot of fire and a lot of depth. And so it's been really great to watch his growth over the last 2 or 3 years as part of the band. I met Roman at my Thursday night blues jam, which I hosted in Campbell for many years. And Rome was, he had just been attending out of curiosity, I think, and he would just be sitting in the audience for a couple of months before I even had a conversation with him. He was very shy. He's somewhat shy, but he was much more shy then. And it took him a while to even admit that he played guitar until I asked him to play, and then I realized this guy can play. So that's where the introduction happened, and I'm very happy that that's how it happened, because it shows that we have a community where talent is kind of nourished and allowed to grow and thrive. And I think of it as an accomplishment for the community to have a wonderful discovery like Rome Yamalov right here in the Bay Area.
Yeah. Is that jam still happening? It sounds like you are no longer hosting it, but is that jam still happening? And was that by chance at Little Loose?
The jam is absolutely happening, and my dear friend, another great guitar player, Johnny Cat Subrand, hosts the jam most Thursday nights. I basically turned the jam over to Johnny Cat at the beginning of this year, simply because my schedule has been quite scattered, and it's hard for me to host two local weeknight jams every week. I host a jam on Tuesday nights at another great venue in San Jose called the Poorhouse Bistro, which has been one of the mainstays of the local blues scene. And just looking at my touring schedule, my recording schedule, it was getting very difficult to handle both events. So I had to kind of, unfortunately, let go of one.
Yeah, those are great venues. And thanks for sharing that about your band. Rome, is that how you say your guitar player's name? Like as in the city?
Yeah.
Rome, I've seen him probably mostly from following you. Seems like he's kind of a regular down at Poorhouse Bistro, so I've probably seen photos of him there. Maybe even saw him in person once, but June Core has been mentioned more than once on this podcast, and I've actually spent some time trying to get him on, but he's kind of tough to chase down. And then Charlie Musselwhite, of course, has come up, and Vance Ellers I am familiar with by name as well, probably through mutual acquaintances. I love so much and enjoyed listening to you talk about those guys. I want to ask you, just from a band perspective, do you experience, this may be a silly question, and I'm asking for selfish reasons, so I think that you're going to know what my experience is when I ask, but do you experience levels of frustration with band dynamics sometimes? It can be musically or just people stuff, or, I mean, it sounds like you get along so great with those guys.
Well, yes, we do, and but obviously it would be a lie to say that everybody gets along with everybody all the time. This never happens in any context. If you've got a group of human beings involved, if you put 3 or 4 people in a room for an extended period of time, they're going to find a way to not like each other about something eventually. So that is obviously, there are sometimes conflicts, small conflicts, something abrasive here and there. It happens. It's just human nature. But in general, everybody, as I mentioned, the guys I work with, the one common trait that they share more than anything is they're all humble. They're all very grounded, and they understand the context, and they have gratitude about the fact that making music is almost a privilege these days, and to be able to be on any stage, anywhere, and have an audience that appreciates what you do is a wonderful thing. So once you can all agree on that, then everything else is kind of, insignificant. So yeah, small day-to-day things or conversational things, if there are frustrations, they get overcome very quickly because of that common understanding and that common bond. We also share a very deep love for traditional blues, classic blues, Delta blues, what they call pre-World War II blues, post-war electric blues. Once you have that musical bond as well, it makes music making easy because everybody is speaking the same language. Maybe with a slightly different accent, but the same language. And there is that understanding.
Right.
So that helps. These two things help greatly. When it comes to addressing frustrations and such. So that would be my response to your question.
It's a nice answer, and there were a couple pleasant points in there that I want to come back to. We're going to take a quick break, though. You're listening to my conversation with Aki Kumar, and this is a track from his release called Hindi Man Blues. The track is called Rukhsana.
रुखसाना झूठा है तेरा प्यार रुखसाना झूठा है तेरा प्यार जब करना था ये धोखा किया क्यों इकरार पहचाना मुझको ना तुमने यार पहचाना मुझको ना तुमने यार
Okay, back to the band conversation. What wonderful reminders that you have. There were two that really jump out at me when you have common interests in music and love in music, and then also the gratitude and privilege that you all see. I think a lot about. I brought this up. It's kind of a recurring theme in in a musician's life. I was going to say in my life, but I was going to say in a musician's life that you see these things, or you're part of them, or you feel them. Or you're trying to maybe smooth them over at some point in time. These things happen, but I often think about a couple of guys I know that their humility is probably their humility comes through in a different way, different I think than mine is able to. I try to stay humble, I think we all do, but I played with a couple of guys that are just so. It's almost like their only purpose there is to lift anyone that happens to be sharing the stage with them that night, and at an exceptional level, though. And there are a lot of people like this, I guess, but some just stand out at me, and I always try to think about them whenever I'm, getting a little frustrated about something. And usually I think about it to the extent of, man, I wish I could be like that, but I am who I am, and I just have these certain things that get under, these certain buttons that get pushed sometimes. But anyway, lovely how you framed.
There's having buttons do get pushed, and it's unavoidable. It's just, we all carry some level of baggage, different kinds of baggage. We all have triggers. We all have expectations and goals, and it's very rare that all of these things are aligned. So inadvertently, I'm sure I trigger somebody or push their buttons, and I'm sure they do the same to me, sometimes explicitly, sometimes not. For me, it's easier, as I said, because we're all in the blues realm, and there's such a commonality in what we're aspiring for as far as the sound goes. It makes it a little easier to meet musical goals. I'm sure if I was working in the original music making space where I had 4 other musicians coming from completely different backgrounds individually, and we were trying to make something happen really, or maybe improvise, it might have been a little more frustrating.
Sure. I can see that. Okay. So switching gears, it has been quite a while since we spoke last, and clearly things are changing for you. We talked about, as an example, you can no longer manage 2 jams. You narrowed it down to one of 2 great ones.
Yeah.
And you had a great guy who could come in and pick up the reins at Little Lou's and Johnny Cat. So since November of 2017, so almost a couple of years, Aki.
Yep. Yep.
What are the big things that have happened for you, and what are the most important things you've learned in that short time?
There's a lot more gray hair. So there's that. I'm hopefully a little more wiser, although I can't guarantee that. I have a new record that came out also on the Little Village Foundation label, which released my Aki Goes to Bollywood record, which I'm sure we discussed in the previous podcast.
Mm-hmm.
so I have a new record called Hindi Man Blues, which I think I'm a little more prouder of. The second release is always tricky when you're following a very solid first release. And I think we kind of outdid ourselves in Hindi Man Blues. It was really well received across the board. I was able to produce a music video for one of the original Hindi tracks on that record that did quite well. It was featured on Billboard.com, and so I got a lot of good reviews. I'm especially proud of the record for many reasons, but one of the primary reasons is that I have 2 songs featured on there that are original tracks. Well, 3, in fact. 2 that I wrote that are originals in Hindi. And I think Hindi blues is kind of a new space for me and for anyone in general. I don't think there's a lot of folks who have been writing songs in Hindi, swing numbers or whatever it might be. So that's kind of like a new direction. My mom, who is just an amazing songwriter and poet herself, although she never pursued that professionally, she wrote a song that I put the music to, and we featured that on the record. And I'm really super proud about that. We went in a couple of different directions. I've infused a little bit of ska into the music, and so that's part of the soundscape now. And so we just kind of push the bounds of what we were doing a little more on the new record. I'm very happy with it. A lot of this has translated to live performance now, so the show has gotten stronger, and I'm able to deliver a longer and more sustained and more powerful Bollywood blues shows these days. And I'm picking up a lot of work, as far as private or corporate events go, because it's such a unique product that people want to even hire the band for backyard parties all the time. The Indian community in the Bay Area is now more aware of this, so I'm getting a lot of work through that.
How cool!
It's been a wonderful year, a year and a half since we spoke.
That's amazing. How did it come about that the video was featured on Billboard.com? And was that it sounds like it was a big deal. Was it a big deal? And did that require marketing on your part, or did it just get picked up?
It was through Little Village's efforts. They work with a wonderful publicist, Jesse Cutler, and I believe he's the one who put the video on Billboard's radar, and they really liked the concept and premiered it on Billboard.com.
That's cool. Do you work with a publicist?
No, I can't afford one yet.
I understand. It's been somewhat of a recurring theme on the podcast. There's been partly because publicists have reached out to me about artists that they picked up. Not a ton of them, but there was a spurt, and I thought, why did my name get on a list or something? Because I was getting contacted by publicists for a short time. But prior to that, I had talked to a couple of guests about publicists and labels, and I think to a degree, most of the artists that I talk to want to be able to align themselves with the right people in these areas among, one or two others. And so it's been something that I've been talking about more, and I'm kind of coming to the realization, maybe I can, and I'm actually just starting to work on this, maybe I can align some of the artists that I meet through the podcast with some of the publicists that I become acquainted with through the podcast. I'm kind of working on some ideas for that. So Little Village Foundation has been mentioned. Kid Anderson's been featured a couple of times on the podcast. He was in one of my very earliest episodes, actually, and he's my to-date only in-person interview. The first time I did it was in person, and I had a new piece of gear. It was all very nerve-wracking, but we just had a conversation for the podcast in the last few weeks. It was a lot of fun, and he's got a lot of cool things going on. So we've talked about the Little Village Foundation, and I'm coming, to realize in speaking with you how far-reaching their efforts are. All these different people that the foundation is working with, and refresh my memory of the gentleman's name who's kind of at the
Jim Pugh. He is
Jim Pugh, that's
the
right.
helm. He is the Little Village Foundation, as far as I'm concerned. I know they have a lot of wonderful donors and a board and all that, but Jim Pugh really is the founder and the CEO of the Little Village Foundation.
Can you talk a little bit about the foundation from your perspective and what it has been in your life, and also what you've observed, from whatever outsider perspective you can offer?
From my personal perspective, really, Jim kind of sparked off the whole Bollywood blues concept, because it had kind of been in my head, but sometimes it takes a push from somebody on the outside to convince you that an idea is worth pursuing or putting to the test. And so when I talked to Jim about this many years ago, he got so excited about the idea that in my head it went, wow, somebody is super stoked about an idea that you're having doubts about. And he put his money where his mouth is. He kind of made the push to have the whole thing recorded and released it under the Little Village label. Brought a lot of attention to the concept. Helped me kind of step outside this blues box that I was in, playing more or less traditional Chicago-style blues, West Coast blues, whatever you want to call it, and kind of helped me rebrand and redefine myself and my music. And this is, I've described this in a few sentences or whatever, but this is a huge thing for any artist to be able to get to this new level or direction that they're seeking, but kind of don't know how to. Mm-hmm. And this is not only through the foundation, but also musically by saying, this is cool, this concept is cool. Here, let me play on this and kind of add credibility to what you're doing, and bring in my own ideas and such, and help produce this record. So that's Jim's greatness is all over those Bollywood blues, records, and I'm forever grateful to him for that. And he's done all of that in a very selfless way, because the way Little Village works in general for any artist that is a Little Village artist is that you're essentially, whatever music that gets produced, or albums, CDs that get printed, you make all the money. There's no record deal, like you would have with a traditional record label where it's a cut of this or that. Basically, the artist gets to keep everything. It's really a philanthropic kind of a operation. Sure. It's unheard of, and he has managed to pull it off over multiple years. So you would think that, okay, it's a little too aggressive, or maybe it's a little too utopian, if you want to call it that. But no, he's pulled it off. The concept is so pure that people are willing to step up and be donors and support his foundation, and he's able to go scout for talent that he thinks is worthy or that needs more visibility, and promote that talent. So kudos to Jim Pugh. He's
another guy I would like to talk to on the podcast someday, and also another guy that's just kind of tough to wrangle in this world that we live in.
Yes, he's very busy.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I just always hear nothing but great things about him, but your perspective on what he's doing, it was very nice.
Yes, and I hope I get to work with him more in the future, with or without Little Village Foundation. Just having him perform or play on the records, it's a beautiful feeling, because he brings this wealth of musical knowledge and depth and wisdom and humor to the whole process.
That's cool. So I think we skipped over something, and I blame myself because of the way I sometimes ask questions. I sort of layer 2 or 3 things in there, but I'm going to reframe it a little bit. So since we talked last time, has anything happened that if you saw it happening to someone else that you would say, hey, you know what, let me share an experience with you, because I don't want you to have to repeat the same, lose the same amount of time or money or let your music soul get harmed in any way, let me tell you about an experience I had that I hope will help you. Has anything like that happened to you since last time we spoke?
Not in a big way. Things have just been more or less steady and more or less getting better. There have been small things here and there taking place. The thing with playing gigs all the time is you accept work in a variety of settings, a variety of venues. You're playing with wonderful people, interacting with wonderful people such as yourself. But you're also working sometimes with unpleasant characters who are really not, really not invested in you or the music. They're just kind of using you as a prop sometimes for business gain. And I've had my fair share of interactions with unpleasant, let's say, venue owners. And it's just something that, it goes towards that whole gratitude and humility thing that it keeps you, it's a reality check sometimes that you ain't all that. No matter how much good is happening, you could have your music video released on Billboard and the same day in the evening you're doing a gig where you're completely humbled by how unknown you are to within a certain context. So for me, it's just part of that lifelong lesson, and that's something I would tell anybody is, no matter what, stay humble. No matter what successes or gains you make, stay humble, because kind of life finds a way to send you that message.
That's great. That is a great tip. Thanks. So, and then speaking of the future or the near term, what are some things that you've been striving for, or some things that you've been thinking about that you want to do in, let's just say, the coming year, or whatever time frame you might put on something like that?
I have been really working on original songs, bilingual songs, English and Hindi, in keeping with the same theme and trend of honestly representing myself through this music. And so that's something I've already been working on for the past few months. I've recorded some new tracks I'm really excited about. And I'm also stepping in, musically everything I do is blues inspired, infused, whatever you might call it, because blues is really the bulk of what I listen to and draw my inspiration from, traditional blues.
Right.
But in my songwriting, I've tried to keep blues as the foundation, but also bring in other rhythmic influences and such, or instrumental influences and such. So some of the newer songs I'm working on are a little more, just a step more out there. I think my songwriting in Hindi has gotten better because I'm making an earnest effort to reconnect with the language, which I've kind of fallen out of touch with. And it's made me appreciate it in new ways. I'm also trying to learn a little bit more about Urdu, which is a related language. Hindi and Urdu are kind of, siblings. They're kind of very related languages, which share the same root, but also diverge in their own unique ways. So it's been kind of tricky for me to decide whether a song is going to be Urdu heavy or Hindi heavy. I don't like doing a fusion of the two. It seems unnatural to me. So that's been another thing I'm working on. And I'm trying to do all of this myself in order to just develop these skills. I could easily contact or get in touch with a lyricist who's far superior to me and who probably has songs written already, but I really am trying to make an earnest effort to build my own chops in songwriting. So that's one thing I'm working on. And I'm really also focused on trying to make my way back to India to deliver these shows. And things are looking positive for me this year. So I'm hoping before the end of the year, I can break into that market in a substantial way.
That would be great. Leading up to this conversation, particularly after I first asked if you had the time to come back on and chat with me, I had this brief thought of, is Aki still pursuing Bollywood blues as heavily as the last time we spoke, because it's kind of as you said about Hindi blues, it's somewhat of a new space, and especially for you. And then look at where you're based in San Jose, although arguably there's plenty of audience there for you.
Yeah.
So I was about to ask, what's the biggest driver for keeping you so excited about it? I think you almost answered it, but maybe there's more. But I can see where learning the languages, as strange as it might sound to some, that the pursuit of reacquainting yourself with these languages is part of it. But have there been other drivers that have kept you so passionate about this? I'm sure there are, but what other drivers are there that are keeping you so passionate about it?
There's many drivers. First, it's blues. Anytime I put in a new record, I don't mean brand new record, I mean a new old record, like a friend of mine, Chris James, gave me some very early Louis Armstrong, a double speed, a box set. And I've just been listening to that all day yesterday, and it's blowing my mind. It's not blues, it's, very early jazz. But just listening to that, now I've got a couple of ideas in my head. No matter what blues I listen to that's coming from that space, I get ideas. I get inspiration. It tells me, oh, this is something you could do better on. This is something this guy was kicking butt on, and you really should try to emulate this. So that is a constant process with me, because I'm constantly listening to and kind of, keeping that creative spirit alive. I also get completely random ideas in my head musically for melodies and compositions all the time. And there is no formal process to this. It happens just, it's kind of out of my control. And I'm grateful for that, because it means hopefully I won't run out of, creative thoughts and song ideas and such. The language thing, as I mentioned, is a way for me to kind of reconnect with my languages that I was speaking fluently before I spent 20 years in the United States. Politically, I want to put more political and humanitarian messaging, more social justice messaging into my songs in Hindi and English, because some of the issues that I'm constantly, yelling about and screaming about here in the United States also apply to India, to the Indian context. So there's that. For me, live performances, because I play harmonica, which is kind of a cardio kind of an exercise, to do it for 3 or 4 hours, it's sometimes physically daunting to be up there singing, keep your voice in shape, keep your body in shape, stay in good shape, and deliver a good show over a long period of time, and then get up and do it all over again the next day. And the next day, yesterday we played 2 shows back to back, one at noon, one at 5. So I have to be in good shape, generally speaking, to pull this off. So I'm focused on that as well, just eating, diet, and some moderate exercise when I can. So there's a lot of motivators here, and the constant theme there is I look at what I'm doing and I say, where can I improve and what can I do better? And that's, I think as long as I keep that focus in mind, I'll never run out of things to work on.
That's good. Does that all, it sounds like it is, but is that all these motivators feeding into your creative spirit too?
They are. Eventually all of it, kind of makes, it comes together in the form of either a show, certain songs that I do live now have character from start to finish. They're kind of a mini performance within a performance, because I've put a show around that song within that context. And so there's that creativity that's happening because of all these other things I'm thinking of. And as far as music making in the studio, for instance, goes, or songwriting, they're all kind of separately and together feeding into this creative process. And I wish I could describe a more formal way in which it works, but I think it's really muddled with me. So I have no way to kind of tell you this happens, this series of things happens with me where that sparks off a creative process. It's really not like that. It
sounds like you're on a roll and in a great place. Are there also aspects of, speaking of creativity, that you're nurturing just as a matter of routine? Meaning, do you have some kind of routines or rituals related to staying creative, such as, maybe scheduling time to write or anything like that?
No, I don't schedule time to write until it's like the day of the recording, and then I panic and then I start writing. So that's a really bad habit. I want to break out of the bad thing. I've observed this about myself, and I think of it as a negative. Because when you're doing professional stuff, you have a lot of urgent things to take care of on a day-to-day basis. Today, I have to send out stage plots to folks, answer with some level of urgency questions from talent buyers, update my website with some information that really needs to get on there very quickly. And this is outside of my personal stuff that I also need to take care of. When you have all of these things in line, for me, I'm looking at my schedule for the rest of the day. I don't see how I'm going to fit in even an hour of quiet writing time. It's just not going to happen. And I really need to work on this, where I make that a more high priority thing, because it's really important for me. And so that's something I'm thinking of actively, is how can I make writing a part of my daily routine? And it's something that's a work in progress. I also sometimes struggle to keep my, instrumental harmonica practice habits in shape. Although I'm playing so much live that it doesn't need to be, I can get away with it. But I do need to work, constantly hone my technical chops, and that's also a work in process and in progress. And I have been taking some time these days to work on that. So I'm happy to say that. But yeah.
I think the only answer is whatever calendar you can get yourself used to, and schedule it ahead of time in front of any other commitments that you make, so that the time is there.
Yep, really.
But no, it's a common challenge. Thanks for sharing it. I think many of us can relate, and I get the good fortune of also I talk to some occasional people who are like, I have a weekly appointment with myself, and the first hour, so I'm like, okay, how long is this thing? It's a couple hours usually. The first hour is them getting all the stuff out of their head as to why they can't think of anything creative at the moment. Yep. and then the work starts, but they stop relying on inspiration or a muse. It's a standing appointment with themselves. So Aki, thank you for coming on again. I think everyone needs to be reminded that they can find out everything about you, upcoming news, and the current goings on at akikumar.com, AKIKUMAR.com. And man, it's been a pleasure. Oh, and if you're listening to this today, we're in July, mid-July-ish of 2019. If you're listening to this and happen to be doing so before August 10 and November 12, be sure to catch Aki at that San Jose Jazz Festival. Is that what it's called?
San Jose Jazz Festival.
And then Irene Espiritu's A Color-Coded Symphony event in Berkeley, that one being the latter one in November. I'm sure they will both be exciting if tickets are available. Aki, man, I'm so glad we had this chat.
I'm very happy I got to chat with you again, man. This is one of... I really enjoy talking to you. You're wonderful in actually making me think about some things I don't even think about, and I don't mention them or think about them until I talk to you on this podcast. So I'm I'm excited every time I get to do this. Thank you for considering me.
Oh, for sure. And you know what? If it's any consolation, you do the same for me, as many of my guests do. Get me thinking about things to kind of share and hopefully help other artists with, and myself. Hey man, I know we said we were going to, but let's be back in touch very soon. I want to keep up with what's going on based on some pre-recording conversation we had. All right?
Yes, absolutely. Would love to do that.
All right. Good luck knocking out all of your errands this afternoon.
Yeah.
Take care, man.
Thank you.
That was fun, wasn't it? I love Aki, man. He's such a great guy. He told me after we were done recording that I had said, man, I really enjoy talking to you. And he said he likewise, and that I always made him think of things that perhaps he should be thinking about all along. It made me feel really good. A lot of guests are telling me really nice stuff like that. It makes me feel like we're having quality conversations. And I hope they're helping you if you are an indie artist. Hey, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, you know that I'm a fan of Bandzoogle. Let me tell you why. Bandzoogle powers websites for thousands of musicians around the world, from garage bands to Grammy winners. They have an easy-to-use system to help you get your site up fast. Lots of mobile-friendly templates to help you customize and design your site. It's built for musicians by musicians. Here are some of the features that Bandzoogle has. They have a merch and download store to sell music and merch commission-free right on your website. A tour calendar to promote your shows and sell tickets commission-free. Mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send professional-looking emails and newsletters. Integrations to pull in content from all your socials. And live support from a musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Plans start at just $8.29 a month, but you can go to bandzoogle.com to start a 30-day free trial. You can use the promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to build your artist website today. Look for links to just about everything talked about in this episode in the episode show notes at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. Thanks again so much for listening. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.